Are we live? Okay. Hello, everybody. I am your girl, Fun in Love with Carly, and we are here live on this happy 4th of July holiday. Some of you guys celebrate. Hello. I am here. I am in the building with Mr. Alwin Bridges, um, naval veteran, um, radio host extraordinaire. Hello, Mr. Bridges. How
Good,
are you today?
good morning, Carlene. And thank you for having me. And I hope you and your family have a safe and a wonderful Fourth of July celebration.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
to you. And to you. Look, just throwing it out there. Are you a grill master?
Yes, I am. I actually grilled yesterday and Sunday. So, I mean, nobody complains. They always seem to walk away living. They don't die 2 days later. So everything was okay.
Good, good. I grilled. I grilled too yesterday, so I want to relax today and go and celebrate with family. Today's topic, our topic for today, happens to be our United States of America and the way that they treat their veterans. And I thought that would be a suitable topic for you, seeing that you are a vet yourself. You are very well decorated. And so I wanted to see your input. How do you feel about this treatment to others after service versus the way they're treated during service?
Okay, and it's a great topic to discuss anytime, but it's more apropos on the Fourth of July. And let me just give you a little bit of background information. I come from a military family.
Mm-hmm.
My father was an Air Force veteran. My brother was an Air Force officer. Both my uncles served in the Army. They liked to walk. And I was recruited by the Navy. I was a Navy officer. And I enjoyed my tenure. And to answer your question, are veterans treated appropriately or fairly after they're discharged or after their 20 or 30-year career? I'm going to say it could be much better. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it goes way back, and we can talk about the systemic issues that are popping up now or bubbling up from the VA. For those who just serve a limited time, they actually don't do 20 years in the military. That's when you can retire.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain benefits that are available to you, and most of those benefits are available to those who serve less than a 20-year career. Most of those benefits are only available to you when you die, such as you can get a grave marker, your spouse can receive a stipend. Right now, the stipend is approximately $1,565. I'm going to say $1,600 a month. The other things that are available to you, depending on your financial situation, you can have access to the Veterans Administration healthcare system. And let me take a soft stop real quick, Carly. A lot of people are under the impression that the Veterans Administration is part of the Defense Department. It is not. It's two separate cabinet level agencies. The Veterans Administration is actually the third largest funded department in the government. First one being the Department of Defense, then HHS, which is Health and Human Services, then the VA. If you just want to talk about, and I'm just going to use a parameter from the Vietnam vets all the way through the Gulf War, the Vietnam vets who experienced a lot of health tragedies, such as exposure to Agent Orange. Some of them came back and had developed cancer. The services just weren't there. They weren't. If you look at more recently the Gulf War One and Two, a lot of the young men and women who served in that theater, not only did they come back with some physical disabilities such as lost limbs and etc., arms and legs, they also came back with this new term called PTSD, post traumatic stress syndrome.
Right.
And for many, many years, even during that time period, it was overlooked and wasn't addressed. The veterans, they a lot of the medical community, when I say medical community, more so the VA and the military healthcare system, which is separate from the VA, thought these young men and women were faking it. And for some people that I know that served in the Gulf, more so Gulf War II, that was the 10-year war. They came back, and I mean, they were really hard struck mentally. And the other thing that was really difficult for them, because I kept in touch, and it was a little bit different from when I served. These kids could text and email you from Afghanistan and Iraq and so forth and so on in the theater. And some of the things that they saw just impacted them. If you talk to most veterans, we'll only really discuss the good things that we've done. You'll never hear about the tragedies. I don't want to call them tragedies, but the things that you see when you see little kids being shot, or a military vehicle actually running over a 5-year-old in the middle of the road because the convoy can't stop. It can't go left or right because that's where the booby traps might be. And we're talking about 18, 19, maybe 22, 25, you could be 35, driving a truck, and you're ordered to run over. You have a 16-ton vehicle, and you're ordered to run over a baby in the road. And I'm calling the baby a 5 or 7-year-old. Um, the services could be better. If some of you might recall during the Obama administration, I'm not picking on President Obama because I'll address everybody from Carter forward. Um, it was an area in Walter Reed, which is in Washington D.C. That's the flagship hospital for the Army. It's a place called Medical Hold where they would have wounded veterans, and it was terrible. There were no windows. Some of the barracks didn't have windows, and it does get cold in Washington D.C. The food was terrible. There were mice, rodents, rats, bugs throughout. Every president, and I'm going to use Reagan going forward, has said that I'm going to take care of the veterans. I'm going to take care of the veterans.
I hear it every time.
Most of them, they might throw additional funds at a program, but overall, the veterans are not well taken care of in this country.
Interesting. Interesting. I noticed that a lot of times when I speak to veterans, I have a pretty well decorated family as well, and they talk about. I've heard a lot of these things about casualties and things that people experience while they're there serving our country. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I noticed the way when you guys come back, they just discharge you here. They just drop you off, and they don't address the fact that you've had to run over a child or whatever it took to survive, or maybe even losing somebody while you were out there, losing people. I've had people that tell me when they were in basic training, they've watched friends pass away during basic training. Now, a lot of times people think in basic training that's the safest part. Well, something happens if we're in basic training and they don't make it back, and they don't address the emotional scar that comes behind that. And I don't know what it is that we can do as a society, as the America, to um, help with our wounded warriors. And when I say wounded, I'm not talking about an outer wound either. I'm talking about the whole package, the emotional part. What is it that you think America can do better to help soothe and soothe this part of our people that risk their lives to fight for it?
Well, to address the emotional piece, and you do lose lives, and it's not that many, but you do lose lives. One is too many in basic training. Okay, I was tasked to look at the Navy basic training at Great Lakes, and also the Air Force basic training in Lackland. But as it stands today, and this goes back maybe 7, 8 years at the most, if you're about to be discharged from the military, you go through, let's call it a cursory psychological exam. And That's along with the physical exam, because the government noted these emotional scars that these young men and women were going through, or having, or better yet, experiencing. That's the key to being taken care of as a veteran. One of the things, and I'm not encouraging people to make duplicitous statements, when you go through that physical, if you are having nightmares or whatever, that's when you tell that physician or that psychologist, more so psychologist, psychiatrist, so he or she can document that in your record. So 2 or 3 years later, if you're still having these maladies, let's call them the dreams, if I may, Carly, then you can report to the VA. The VA can pull up your military record and say, oh, you did experience this because upon your discharge on July 4th of 2023, this is what you said. The same thing goes for physical injuries you might encounter. If you if you experience a meniscus tear or tendon tear in your knee, they'll repair that in the military on active duty. But let me make assurances to you. About 5 6 years later, something's gonna happen to your gait. That's a fancy term for you're gonna have a limp, prospectively. Be sure that's documented so that you can get that rating when you do go to the VA. And one of the things, and let's just for a minute focus on, let's just put them all in one basket and say these are physical, mental ailments, health issues. You can get money for those injuries. Now, no amount of money is going to make you, if I may, psychologically correct, but it might help you make it through life. Because I know a couple people, I'm gonna call them friends. They experienced PTSD in Iraq, and they're unable to work because they can't be around people. They don't like loud noises. They don't
Right.
like to be, I know, hopefully you don't have a job where you're being screamed at, but those orders that just reminds them of being in the military. So they, right now, both of them are on what's called an 80% disability. So they're
Mhm.
getting 80% of their highest pay in the military.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't restrict them from going to work, but these two individuals, they're never going to be able to go back to work. I know that for a fact. The other thing that, just to share with your audience, there's what's called the 5 year rule. If
Mhm.
if a person is rated today, within 5 years, and when I say rated, that means they have some medical malady or psychological malady. Within 5 years, they can be examined 3 times, 13 times, or 20 times. The group of physicians might say, well, you're cured, nothing's wrong with you. Then you lose that rating. You go from just making up $3,000 a month to $0 a month. Then they have what's called a 10-year rule. If you make it by the 5 years, then you got to make it by 10 years. If you don't lose that rating within 10 years, you keep that for the rest of your life. So it's important for anybody who's on active duty or who is a veteran or recently discharged, or if you think that you experienced something in the military, go to the VA. There's VA, we're in Cleveland here. And actually, the Cleveland VA here in University Circle is one of the highest rated VA facilities in the country.
Okay.
No, it
Yeah.
really is. It's in the top three.
Mhm.
Uh, they don't have it's not a knock. It happens in the civilian sector. They don't have a full range of health services, like let's say a Cleveland Clinic might or a university hospital. The VA has somewhat changed the rules across the country. If you can't get into the VA within a given point of time, they'll let you transfer out to the closest civilian facility. Now, for example, I know some guys who needed a gastric bypass. They don't do that here in Cleveland. That person had to go all the way to Michigan, Ann Arbor, the Ann Arbor VA, to have that procedure done. They pay him to go there. If you wanted to escort whoever, you get paid to take him or her. They'll put you up in a room or a hotel room, and you bring Al back home, back to Cleveland. The services in the VA have really improved greatly. One thing I did as a young teenager, which was a couple of weeks ago, I used to go down to the VA and play chess and checkers and cards with the veterans. And I can vividly remember when they just set the veterans in wheelchairs up against the wall. And if some of you remember, I'm going to use a bad term here, Carly, the stench of a nursing home or a cancer ward, that's what you would smell when you walked into the hallway. And I would
Mm,
spend anywhere from no less than 3 to 4 hours on the weekends, more so on Sundays, with the guys.
mm,
And in Cleveland, there was another facility out in Brecksville, and everything comes full circle. Brecksville is now closed. It's been closed, I think, about at least 4 or 5 years now. And the VA, if you're a veteran, for your health services, you pay this tremendous amount called nothing. You don't pay a dime for it. If you're written a prescription, the cost out of your pocket for that prescription is nothing. And I
mm,
encourage the veterans to take advantage, not because of the cost, but for their own health status. To go back and, if I may, let me better address, our veterans truly taken care of. There's good stories and there's bad stories wherever you go. I'm going to give the VA, the Veterans Administration, a rating on a scale of 0 to 10, about a 6.5, no more than 7. It could be better. The VA doesn't have a full complement of medical professionals. They're competent, but they're short-staffed. And let's forget about the pandemic, that crisis. They're
yeah.
short-staffed because, as a VA physician, and I'm going to make myself an orthopedist, the VA might pay me, let's say, $200,000, okay, a year. If I was a civilian and I'm not in the military as a VA physician, but if I was working at another hospital system, that $200,000 quickly turns into maybe $700,000 to $800,000. Okay, so if we're just going to base it on money, which is an important driver in American society, that's one of the issues. Uh, One of the better secretaries was a gentleman by the name of General Shinseki. He was a four-star uh, Army general, and he actually served in Iraq.
Mm,
And he was the first military officer in decades to serve as a VA secretary. And he really started to make some significant changes because he understood what these soldiers, airmen and Navy and Coast Guardsmen were experiencing, women, excuse me, were experiencing. And I think what happened to him was not that he wasn't doing his job. He did his job too well, and he was asked to depart the administration. It's just sad on how we think about veterans. People who know I served in the military will walk up to me and say, "Well, thank you for your service." And my answer to them is, always my honor and privilege. And I'll be blunt with you. I'm not taking anything away from what a Home Depot or a Steak and Shake or whatever restaurant does on Veterans Day. I really don't participate in that. And maybe that's my form of PTSD. I know other veterans are struggling, so they can have my spot in line to get a free Coke and a blooming onion at Outback Steakhouse or whatever case might be, or entree salad at whatever restaurant. Applebee's, I think, is one that does that. I just don't take advantage of that because there are veterans out here who struggle. And one of the things that, I'll touch on and let you ask another question, is there are a lot of unsheltered veterans or homeless veterans,
there are.
and some of them do that by choice. Some of them run away, abandon themselves and their families because of the psychological traumas that they've experienced, that they've gone through. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
One thing just in comparison, we have what's called the volunteer army or military, and
Uh-huh.
we're just celebrating the 50th year of the volunteer military in this country. Now, depending on what your thought processes are, Military service should be mandatory for everybody in this country. And I'm not saying that as some guru person, okay? It should, it should
I'm
be,
listening.
it should be, it should be mandatory. And I'm going to compare it to Israel. Is
Mhm.
military service is mandatory for men and women in Israel because one, it brings you closer to understanding what you're defending, what you stand for in this country, more so Israel. And I'm not making fun of America as I happen to be an American. And as I've told young people, older people, or whatever, and I'll be blunt with you, I've encountered drug dealers, okay?
Okay.
And they say, well, I said, I gave people in the military gave you that right to sell drugs. Believe it or not, it's not the right thing to do. It's not because everybody in the military takes an oath to defend the Constitution, and there's some
Right.
other things, but more so to defend the Constitution and obey the orders of those who are appointed above you. An abbreviation. You can do anything you want in this country. That doesn't mean you can get away with it.
That's right.
So if if you have a chance to serve in the military, it instills some sense of discipline in some people. And I don't mean discipline from the standpoint of somebody grabbing you and shaking you and spanking you maybe like you were as a kid. It tells you that your duty station starts at 5 a.m. or your duty station starts at 5 p.m. and your duty station, if you report at 5 a.m., you get off at 2 p.m. You just can't walk off. See, you can walk off, you can walk out of Burger King and never come back.
True.
You can't walk off and put the ship out in the middle of the ocean. You just can't walk off the USS America in the middle of the Mediterranean. Or you can't jump out that airplane without a parachute if you're in the Air Force. You might try to desert if you're in the Army or the Marine Corps. They'll come find you. We'll come get you. We'll find you. And depending on what your answer is and who your commanding officer is, say, okay, you had a mental infarction. And that's all we'll give you this one. The second time, we're going to, if I may, punish you, Article 15. That's going to
Uh-huh.
take some money. You might lose a little bit of rank and you might get restricted to the barracks or whatever. Go to your job, go to the barracks. You can't go play basketball, whatever. If you do something so severe, you can end up court martial. That's called the general court martial. And we will send you home or you get sent home with either general or dishonorable discharge. Now, to show you how the VA has really changed, it used
Mhm.
to be many years ago, if you were dishonorably did anything less than a general discharge, you were not eligible for any VA benefits, even if you lost both arms and legs with a dishonorable.
Okay.
Today, 3 years, well, it's been 4 years now, the law was changed. Even with a dishonorable discharge, you are eligible for VA benefits.
That's good.
Well, yeah, it is good. We'll leave it at that. It's good. It's
They
good.
should be.
Okay. We can agree to disagree, but it's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Cause see, I can stand on my square and say that I believe that they should be because even though they were dishonorably discharged, um, they still serve. You can't take a person's life and they're out there serving, and because they did something wrong, I don't know what they did wrong. Let me tell you, I'm just saying.
Hmm.
I've had people. It's not very many people that I know that have a dishonorable, but I do know a couple of people that have had a dishonorable, and their reasoning for whatever happened to them years later to still not be able to have the benefit from the government to support them, even though their intention was pure when they went and they took that oath they were going to serve their country and everything, and they actually did go. You can't take that away from them. They need you, especially for the psychological, this physical, whatever they have experienced since they've been back. They need to be amongst veterans that understand them.
No, and just from a pure standpoint, yes, they did serve. And I'm saying that with all due respect to any and everybody. I had the, I don't, well, I had the opportunity to help convict CT surgeon, cardiothoracic surgeon, who
Okay.
had performed surgery on a couple retired people. And if just real quick with the audience, it was at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And CT surgery is not a residency, it's a fellowship after general surgery. So you have fellows in this program. And the gentleman's name is Dr. Billick. And he had done a full cabbage on the procedure. That's where you just open up the cavity, chest cavity, that people call it, you fillet like a fish. And the goal is not to keep that cavity open too long because you begin to swell from the retraction. And this particular operation lasted close to 10 hours, which is probably, let's say about 3 hours too long. And they couldn't close the cavity, but he sutured the guy together and took him up to the ICU. And
Okay.
I happened to be in charge of the hospital that day. And I get this call to come up to the ICU. And I come up there, and I mean, you would have thought it was a parade. Everybody was in this man's room. Blood was on the floor. The, the bed was saturated with blood because it's seeping through where the
Oh my
sutures.
God, this is disgusting. Okay.
And the fellow didn't know what to do. I'm not faulting him. So I turned to a nurse. I said, go back to the nurse's station and you call and you page Dr. Billick. I don't care if your husband calls you, you keep calling him until he answers. The man expired. And Dr. Billick was a little fella. Okay. And just to give you some context, he had some of the best training. He was trained by Denton Cooley and DeBaki.
Mm.
And he finally shows up at the hospital about 10:15. And I said, well, did you receive your pages and phone calls? He said, yes. I said, well, why didn't you answer him? He said he was at dinner. And I had him arrested, standing in the hallway. He was eventually convicted for second degree murder.
Oh shoot.
Oh, so and again, I don't want to. That's an extreme. That's an extreme. There are people who sell drugs, who murder their family members, who rape men and women. Women do the same thing. I'm not trying to make it all a man thing here. And so, just to go back, should Dr. Billick be given VA benefits when he's released from prison? That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. My answer, I will. I say no. All right.
I would still say yes because he still served.
But he didn't
You
serve.
cannot you can't take away the fact that the person actually did serve. Now, did he do something that was just a disgrace? Absolutely. But you can't take back the fact that he did go, he did serve. You can't take it away from this particular person.
And Carl, again, that's your square. I respect
Yeah.
you and I can agree to disagree.
Uh-huh.
This
Uh-huh.
is one of the things that, again, and I'll reply back to you in a minute. This all you have to do is 90 days accreditable service, and you could break your leg, let's say, and unable to walk again because that somewhat takes you out of the military, or your leg might fall off, let's say. You just have to have 90 days and you're eligible for every VA benefit out there, from health care to a VA home loan. The educational program somewhat doesn't exist like it did in World War II and the Korea and more so Vietnam. Uh, that's all you have to do. Now, the
I
Dr.
want to
Billips,
elaborate on on that part about who should qualify for this benefit, even if something like that happens. Only
Mhm.
because, like you said, that's to one extreme what this gentleman did, and there are people that got I want to say court-martialed. I hope I'm using that term properly here. They got a dishonorable discharge from the
Mhm.
military, and there's different lengths to this extreme of why they could have been dishonorable discharge. So if you say, okay, this person may spend this much time in prison and gets out, should he be eligible for this VA benefit? What my reasoning for saying yes is because there's so many other things on the spectrum that people can get dishonorable discharge for. So when you say, okay, if you have a dishonorable discharge, you qualify everybody, you lump them all together. And like I said before, when you're dealing with the mental issues that come behind people actually systemically being in the military. The training that goes into there, they break them down and build them up their own way, and then they send them out to fight, and they come back. People, a lot of people don't know how to handle that. The VA is there specifically to handle people who have been a part of the military, who had to go down and get broken down and built back up to go fight, to go and see what their eyes have seen. You can't change that. You can't take that away from a person's mental. Once they have these flashbacks, once they've seen something, once they've engaged in any type of warfare, you can't erase that from them. And when you allow them to go into the VA, where these people are specialty, that's a specialized unit for people that have served, to understand what's going on into their mental, to understand that they can't deal with certain sounds, to understand you can't just go and grab somebody who's in the military to restrain them because they're gonna beat your ass. They're ready for combat. They've been trained. If they're having a psychological delusion going on this moment and you don't know it, you might see that better, but you got Boom Shika over here who thinks she could just run the world and do whatever she want to do and get in somebody's face. She can get her neck broken. She don't understand that you cannot handle a veteran who's dealing with psychosis the same way that you can deal with someone else. So the VA is specifically put there to cater to our veterans. Now, what they did to be dishonorable, I get what you're saying, but the service is still supposed to be set up and set apart to customize their care so they can be cared for more proper.
And Carly, I understand why the VA gives benefits now. They don't treat you any different or me any different who had an honorable discharge to anybody who has a general or dishonorable. Okay. And I understand that. I'm not trying to say that that was crazy. I got that. And
Because that was pretty screwed up what he did. You know, I would have locked his ass up too and let them give him his VA benefits while he was locked up. So
well, no, you don't get. Well, he got what was called Leavenworth benefits. Okay, and if I'll make the story real quick, I had the privilege of escorting him along with the U.S. Marshals to Leavenworth,
uh-huh.
and at the point in time of the sentence, the military judge says, you know, we're giving you a dishonorable discharge, and you are going to serve so many years at Leavenworth. And although you fly in your uniform, once you get to Leavenworth, they give you a different uniform. And I walked him along with the guards to his cell. Like I said, he was really a little tiny guy. And when the jailer, if I may, because it's an army prison, closed the cell and he said, "Sir, we're ready to go." I said, Go on out there. I'll be there in a minute." And I said some things to him that my parents wouldn't be proud of, but uh, because he was just one of those arrogant type people, and he just thought what he did was right. And as a physician, you take another oath, this Hippocratic oath, and it says to do no harm. So he did harm. But one of the things, along with your topic today, several jurisdictions across the country in courts, they have what's called a military court now. They don't treat you like a court martial. They look at you and say, well, yes, you might have PTSD. You might have this experience to why this triggered you to do something, to do whatever.
Right.
And it's just like a drug court. It's, you know, it's a small section in the general division, like here in Collier County. And that's a good thing because, like you pointed out, you take an 18-year-old kid, and that's a kid in relationship to your age, because I'm 19. But yeah, you take an 13-year-old kid, and you put her or him through 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the branch you're in, of basic training. And let's say nobody gets wounded. You know, they do break you down because they want you to understand you don't function as an individual. You have to function as a unit or a
That's
team.
right.
And then you make it through basic training, and God forbid, wars are ugly. There's collateral damage, not only to innocent civilians and property, get destroyed, your physical self gets destroyed, mentally and or physically.
Mm-hmm.
Keep this in mind. An 18-year-old kid can't even drink in most states. But we're
That's
going to
true.
give that 18-year-old kid an M15, M16, or whatever, give them
Mm-hmm.
a tank to drive.
That's
They're not
true.
going to be a pilot, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But we're giving them millions of dollars worth of equipment. And when they finally make it to 21, they can go drink, even on base, but most bases let you drink early. Uh, Only thing you can do is vote. And we're entrusting our safety and security, which is a good thing, to an 18, 19, 20-year old who can't even drink. And technically, really shouldn't even buy cigarettes. Okay?
That's true.
Uh, Most of the military is made up of young white boys or men and girls, and then minorities. But although a smaller percentage of minorities, we suffer the most from PTSD, racism, some other things. Okay. And the VA is important. And I'm not trying to discount the European culture here. I'm going to be selfish. The VA is important to us as a culture. And a recent report about 3 weeks ago, it came out that African American men and women are being denied benefits, the health benefits or the medical boards, as we discussed earlier, at a higher percentage than our white counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
So we go untreated, and which is dangerous in itself. One
Is
thing,
this across the board, or are we still talking about VA?
we still talking about the VA. This is at
Okay.
the VA.
Okay. Uh-huh.
African Americans are being denied at medical boards their benefits. And, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Well, wait a minute. When I went into the military, both my feet face forward. Now, one of
Yeah.
them is pointing towards the east, and you say nothing's wrong with me. Now, you can file an appeal. Now, some appeals are turned down too, so we're not even making it through the appellate process. The appeals on the medical side. Uh, they've also found out that this goes back to World War II and the Vietnam War. We were being denied educational benefits, although we were eligible.
That's true. Yes.
All right. Now we can, I don't want to turn this into a racism discussion because
It's a
racism,
real conversation that we're having here today, so just keep it real.
yeah, it's never racism never is never going to go away, nor is discrimination. As long as there's two separate people on this planet, one of them's going to be a racist, or I'm going to discriminate against you because you're a woman, or you're going to discriminate against me because I'm a man, or whatever the case might be. Uh, until we, as African Americans, implode ourselves into the military structure, we're always going to be we're going to be denied at a greater rate than the Europeans. Now, see, personally, I had a great career. The lowest ranking person I ever worked for was a two-star admiral. And one of my mentors was a guy by the name of Lieutenant General Frank Peterson, first black fighter pilot in the Marine Corps. I did 2 tours at the White House, but as my parents, my mother would say, "So what? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for other people?" And see, one of the things that is important is when I say you, us as black folks, we have to be part of the discussion. You can't
That's
discuss things outside the wall. You have to be at the table. And yes, I was called things in the Navy as an officer.
I believe it.
Now I have was I shouldn't I don't have PTSD diagnosed. I have PTSD self-diagnosed. Okay, uh, it's only I also my last assignment I was on the Chief of Naval Operations staff as the first black officer. And if you think that was a picnic, because you only here because you black, no, I'm here because the man needs me. He
That's right.
he requested me, but that's okay. See, one of the things going back to the VA and Admiral Watkins after he retired, he then called me. I went to his retirement ceremony because I was gone by then. But he became the Secretary of Energy, and he said, "Hey, Al, come serve with me. And I said, no. And he was a good guy. He treated me really, really well. I wanted out of the government by that point in time. But going back to the VA, what's important, see, one of the things that's never happened at the VA, there's never been a black secretary.
Mm.
Never. Just like at the Treasury Department, there's never been a black secretary.
Mm.
So see, now we made it. They put us in charge of the bullets and the bombs at the Defense Department, but they won't put us in charge of the money and taking care of the veterans after we leave. Now, do I think like a black man? Yes, I do. Because the first people I'm going to take care of, don't tell them we're not live already. The first people I'm going to take care of are going to be black people because we are disadvantaged to begin with. Because, and excuse me, if this is insultive to people, let me apologize first. I apologize. We have a permanent tattoo. We have what's called a black tattoo. So when we walk in the room, I don't care if you went to Harvard across Harvard Avenue, or you went to Yale, or you yelled at your siblings, or you went to Akron, or you went to wherever, college or whatever, high school. When you walk in the room, the first thing they see, you're a black woman, I'm a black man. They never, very seldom do you hear, oh, look at that white boy, look at that white girl. We might say that, but they don't say that about each other. So our tattoo brands us either in the good or bad way. So the VA, until I don't know if it will really change, Carly. I hope it would. Uh, if we ever have the chance or opportunity to see a black secretary of the VA, now the current gentleman who's there, he came from, he's an Obamanite.
Mm-hmm.
He never served in the military. If you look at the last four presidents, what was the guy, the orange guy, Trump? Trump, well, he had orange hair. Trump, Trump was in the military. Obama did 8 years. He never served. Biden never served in the military. The last president to serve, and he was actually in the reserve, was Bush Jr. He's the Air Force pilot. Reagan didn't. Well, Reagan did serve in the military. He served in what was called the press corps, not the civilian press corps, but he was in the press corps in the army. And now, and Jimmy Carter, he served. He was a Naval Academy graduate. A lot of people didn't know that he was a nuclear engineer, smart guy.
Mm.
So until presidents actually understand the suffering or what's really needed, not too much going to change. So I'm going to keep it at like what I say, 7.2, 7.5 out of a scale of 10.
Now, I want to rewind our conversation a little bit because we kind of went past it real fast. I want to rewind it right back to the point where you said that you believe that the citizens of the United States of America, everybody, men and women, should have to serve in the military. I would like to rewind it back to that point because my question to you is having our citizens, I mean, it's just a hypothetical thing, you guys. We're
Mm-hmm.
just talking, okay? We're just having a conversation here. Serve in the military, one thing I do get about that, because I want to say it, is the camaraderie. It teaches a brotherhood, it teaches respect and everything for where we are if that was to occur. Now, in our nation, we know that they're not going to recruit everybody to be a part of the armed services. But is there something in the military that that you believe they could implement in the school systems to help them to become more of a brotherhood?
Yes, let's go. And if you want to use, let's say, junior, well, middle school, I guess it's called today. You remember junior high school. I remember it called middle school. In high school, you could have a junior RO, it's called junior ROTC. That's Reserve Officer Training Corps.
Yeah, yeah. I was
That would, you and I remember Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, or whatever. Okay,
Girl Scout. Uh-huh.
Girl Scouts, Brownies, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. But that that in some sense, I'm not going to compare it to the military. It taught you or taught us how to work with other people to get along. You know, it takes two people to pitch a tent. It takes two people can pitch the tent. The other two can dig the trench around it, so just in case it rains. Um, Junior ROTC, and then when I again use the term discipline, I'm not talking about punishing somebody. It says, well, this is what we have to do to accomplish this. Okay. I think across this country, and let's be full disclosure here. The military and anything, but the military is nothing but a slice of society. You're going to get the bigots, the racists, the love me nots, the love everybody or whatever. Okay. And hopefully you can weed those people out. Now, some people come in that way, but they don't stay that way. Some people want to stay that way, and they, for lack of better terms, probably they get sent home. All right.
Mhm.
Now, should they try to put junior ROTC back in the school system in certain schools, if not all the schools? Yes, they should. There's, and again, we're in Cleveland, Ohio. The police department, no different than across the country, but I'm gonna be selfish. I happen to live in Cleveland, so I really don't give half a hot damn if they're short 500 police officers in Detroit. I really don't. But I do care for short 500 police officers in Cleveland.
Tell
Okay.
us what you say,
So,
yeah.
because I happen to live here, so when you dial 911, the operator says, "Well, it'll be 2 years before we can send a car, not 2 weeks, but 2 years." So let's go forward here. If the police department is trying to revitalize what's called the police cadet corps in Cleveland, with the hopes that if Carly and Al and whoever else might be listening join this cadet corps, they can say, "Oh man, I'm gonna grow up. I want to be a policeman." Now, depending on what those sworn officers come in and that kid hears, I'm gonna grow up and I don't want to be a policeman. You got shot at 3 times a day, and somebody called you 15 times outside your name or whatever. Okay, it is still, even if you don't make it or you desire not to become a military member. Although I did say military service should be mandatory in this country, and at least for 2 years, even if you do the reserves, it should be mandatory. So that doesn't mean you're going to say, "Oh, I did my 2 years in the reserves. Now I want to go on great active duty. No more weekend warrior thing." And that's okay. But maybe I'm going to use your term. It instills some camaraderie. It instills some sense of, this is my country, regardless of what somebody who doesn't look like me might say. This is my country. I have the same freaking rights that you do.
Absolutely.
And I'm
Absolutely.
going to take my rights just like you take yours.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Um, you can be Mr. or Mrs. whatever culture while you're outside your duty, as long as it's within the parameters of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Has nothing to do with the VA. But when you put that uniform on, you and I are the same. You might outrank me, and I say, "Yes, yes, ma'am." Got to salute you, especially if you're a commissioned officer. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. No, sir. Whatever. But at 2 o'clock, when our duty station ends, we can take that uniform off, put our earrings in, put our nose rings in, and go go get your, yeah. You can't wear the bangles on when you're in uniform. You can go get drunk. Only thing you can't do is use drugs.
Mhm.
Just don't show up to your duty station hungover. Okay. And the military pay is great. Is better. Again, going back, it's related to the VA. If you do 90 days of creditable service, 90 freaking days, that's 3 months.
3
You
months.
3 months, your VA
Hmm.
benefits kick in. You can go buy a house with VA benefits. I think they're up to $585,000 now. Approved. Approved. The government backs that loan. I was fortunate enough to build a house. I put $500 down. That's what I handed to build it. And they said, "Well, most people put 50% down." I said, "Well, unless you a bank, I'm not giving you 50% of what this house costs." I said, "I can afford to lose $500." Built a house. One thing that the VA more did for me when I agreed to enter the military, they wiped all my student debt, wiped it out. I said, "Oh, this not bad." Now to show you how I'm make it sound funny because when I informed my parents that I was going in, I didn't go in the Navy at 19. I was 32 years old, and I called my parents and I said, I'm be a Navy officer." My father started laughing. I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "You didn't like the Boy Scouts," but I, I said, because I'm really not a true conformist, but I'm smart enough to be a conformist, not a conform. But
Uh-huh.
one of the things I figured, I said, well, they're going to pay this, they're going to do this, I get this. I said, well, as long they're not shooting at anybody right now, so I'm good. Well, I didn't think or project that 3 years later they would be shooting at somebody. So, but all's good. I I think going back to the essence of our discussion early on, yeah, the VA has his holes, and I mentioned the current secretary. He's not a military member. He doesn't have any military experience. And I share with you and the audience that I come from a military family, but I can't tell you what it was like to serve in Korea. That's what my father was. I can't tell you what it's like to be a paratrooper. That's what both my uncles did. Okay, it didn't make sense to me to jump out of the airplane that had good wheels, but that's what they did. My brother was an Air Force officer. Okay, but
Okay.
with all that being said, each person lives their own experience, and that experience take good advantage of what's put in front of you. Okay, now
Mhm.
the VA, part of the military, paid for my advanced graduate degree, and I said, "Ooh, still no debt," and they were going to send me to law school, but the VA, the secretary, he depends on the long-term SES staff. That's the senior executive service. Those are federal employees. And I'm not trying to say he doesn't have any authority. You depend on that staff to guide you along your tenure. All right. See, one good thing is, and depending on how you want to look at it, you don't see information or news bites about the VA anymore. The secret to any government, I shouldn't call it secret, the role of any government agency is not to be on the headlines. Don't be in the headlines. You don't even want to be below the fold on the first page. Now, if the VA says, which they just did, they increase the benefits for those on military disability. They're going to get, if I remember, it's about 8.3% raise,
Mhm.
which is that's phenomenal for them, and it's going to be retro back to, if I remember, April. So that's a good thing. Um, but you don't hear too many good things coming out the VA, although the VA actually has uh, one of the best medical services in the country. Most of
Mhm.
your advanced surgical procedures all came out of the VA. The VA actually was kind of sort of created during the Civil War, and the VA really stepped up its game right after or during the Korean War.
Mhm. Listen, I want to say one final question, but it may not be. Um, it's a comment actually. Let's say this. We were talking about, I'm going back again to ROTCs. ROTCs are traditionally, they start like in high school. Would you say that it would be more beneficial to have something in place for um, elementary schools to start like with something in that type of training instead, and they're voluntary, like you can be a part of the ROTC, JROTC programs. Do you think it'd be more beneficial to start these children learning about the structure that comes with the military from kindergarten?
Well, not necessarily learning the structure.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm going to answer the question with an example here. How many people do you like to go see marching bands when you were in high school or maybe college? You watch Thanksgiving Day parade. You know, that's unison. That's a team functioning together. If you want to take elementary school kids and have them go out and just practice marching, and I'm not, having some drill sergeant stand over them, ranting and raving. When you When you see people march, everybody's left foot and right heel goes down together, and the kids they see that and they know that and they're like, "Wow!" All right. Uh, uh, an elementary school kid, I'm just going to say somebody in second, third grade, they really don't care the difference between the private and the general. They just might know that the general gets to stand over this private and say,
Mhm.
have he or she do certain things. It's the unison and the teamwork that's important. Uh, See, one of the things, again, shameless plug, I recruited physicians and I also was the social dean at Meharry Medical College. So, what's important, especially with, and again, I'm going to be selfish here, with young African American kids, students, you get them as early as possible. Now, some kids will make it to the 12th grade and I want to be a doctor, but they never took a biology, chemistry, whatever course, so they're behind the curve. Okay. If you get those kids, let's say in the eighth, ninth grade, maybe seventh, or sixth, seventh grade, and say, well, hey, this is what a nurse does. This is what this the physician does. This is what a dentist does, et cetera, et cetera. So you planted that seed early. So you tell that kid this is what he or she
Absolutely.
should do to prepare themselves
Mhm.
to be that way, make it into that profession. And there's a young man in Cleveland. He's from Cleveland. His name is he's a doctor now. It's Dr. Embry. And Regina Britt used to write articles about him because he
Mhm.
was kind of sort of homeless.
Mhm.
He was a graduate from university school and went on to losing blank school out there in Lorain County. But I met him and he wanted to go to medical school. He took the MCAT when he graduated from college. He worked for UH and he worked in the infectious disease program there as an outreach worker. And he wanted to be a physician. Somebody introduced me to him. So he took the MCAT, did okay, all right, and but his goal was to go to Meharry. And we arranged for him to have an interview at Meharry, and he got accepted. He ended up being he did a fellowship his second year. He went off to Washington University in St. Louis, got an MPH, Master's in Public Health, graduated on time, got an MD. He along the way, this whole process, I said Terrence, because he was going through his rotation. You know, early on, I want to be a gynecologist, then I want to be a neurologist, which is okay because you're exposed to these different rotations. And then all of a sudden, he settles on psychiatry.
Mhm.
He applied.
Mhm.
He's the only black resident at Yale University hospital in the psychiatry program. Has his own podcast there now. Got that his first year. And the brother's rolling. He'll finish next year.
Mhm.
You don't see too many black psychiatrists, especially males. You don't see too many black psychiatrists who are female. And so here, this kid was exposed to something in high school and he lived his dream. He chased it and lived it. I think
That's
elementary school would be a little bit too early. You know, with
mhm.
the kids have a, you know, I'm not trying to say everybody has to be a super citizen. See, when you were in school, you probably remember standing up, you know, putting your right hand on your chest, I pledge allegiance to the flag, et cetera, and sat down and maybe you got to a certain grade, they let you hold the flag and you put it back in the post where it was. Again, I'm whatever instills that sense that you belong here. This is everybody's country, and it's just as much yours and mine as it is somebody who doesn't look like us. Junior ROTC, I think it should start maybe no earlier than the seventh grade. You can do the marching thing and let the elementary school kids see everybody else march by along with them,
I like it. Mhm.
and they see us, the middle and the senior high school kids. You have your that uniform on for that 1 or 2 days. And that's what I want to be. That's what I want.
I
I
love
want
it.
that. That's what you do.
I love it. I love that idea because of the structure that comes from it. And it doesn't have to be malicious or hard, but the ROTC, all of these different teams, one band, one sound, it does
Hmm.
have a camaraderie. And I think if they were if we were to implement something like that into our inner city schools, where they actually, that's really about positive reinforcement when you deal with JRTC or in these military type of things, because they get the all they little, they get decorated.
Right.
They earn their stripes literally. And everybody want to get the most decorations on their uniform. You
It,
know, I would love to see. Let's start here in the city where we live, in Cleveland, Ohio, for them to implement something like that. That's more of a positive reinforcement, and it be a school unit, not like it's not voluntary, not an involuntary program that's like that. That this is just what the schools are based on,
right.
and build the principle about unity, about respecting each other, about respect yourself, implemented here. you know. But listen, I'm gonna tell you like this: we reached our time, and this was an amazing show. And I thank you for joining me and being my guinea pig on my show. I'm just teasing you guys for not being my guinea pig. I gotta poke a little fun. But I thank you for joining me on my show today, especially on the 4th of July. And just you being who you are. Thank you for the energy that you brought here today. Thank you for your service, even though I know you're gonna say something witty about that. But I do want you to just receive that, because you are an amazing person. You have done some amazing things that some people will only dream of doing and never think they can accomplish it. You've already done that in your life, and you're still accomplishing things. So thank you for all the energy that you put out there into making sure people can understand what it's like to serve that most powerful gem that you dropped a lot of gems today. But I want to reiterate the one that you did give. You said if they were to give, I think you said 90 days,
That's
three
correct.
months of their time into the military, they can be honorably discharged and receive every benefit. You guys, if you're watching right now, pay attention. This is coming from wisdom. When you hear wisdom speak, you must listen. 90 days, and you can actually change your whole life. Go in and get that structure that you may desire. You may need that in your world to cultivate you to be in a better space for your tomorrow, for your today, for your youth. Go ahead and do that thing. I would listen. I wouldn't usually push that out, but you made me a believer by just talking to you. So thank you for that. You guys, please follow myself. I am Fell in Love with Carly across all of my platforms. If you don't already, go ahead and like, subscribe on my YouTube channel. Run those numbers up for me. If you're not my friend on Facebook, please go make sure you follow me on Facebook, IG. I'm everywhere. Fell in Love with Carly. Al over here is Al Bridges on Facebook. Listen, he has not gone over to Instagram, TikTok, or any place else, but I'm going to work on trying to convert him to see that how important his social media following is.
Well, Carly, thank you for having me as a guest. And in return to what you said, thank you for my services. I share with everybody my honor and privilege to do that for you and the country. And the one thing I want to leave with everybody, don't try to be an important person. Just do important things. Just do
Come
important
on.
things. And you keep up the good work, Carly. You have excellent guests and excellent shows.
Thank you.
You're
And again,
welcome.
one more shameless plug, you guys. Don't forget to join me at 5 o'clock in the morning for my 5-second rule. I will see you guys later. Thanks again for following. I love you guys. Now go ahead and love yourself.
Bye.
Bye.